Hello everyone and welcome to our Crowdfund Sport webinar with British Cycling. My name's Grace and I'm a coach here at Crowdfunder. Today we hope you leave knowing more about crowdfunding in general as well as the British Cycling Places to Ride Fund. At the end of today's session, we're going to share a link to our Learn platform, which will give you all the tools that you need to run a successful crowdfunding campaign. So just before we start, I'm going to go through some housekeeping. We have allowed 30 minutes for today's session, but it might take a bit more or a bit less depending on how many questions we have. If you do have any questions, please just pop them in the chat box on the right hand of your screen and we will be having a Q&A at the end of the session. We're currently working remotely, so please bear with us if our internet cuts out. And then finally, we can't see you. You can see us, but we can't see you. So today we're going to be hearing from Andy from British Cycling, who's going to be telling us more about the Places to Ride Fund. Chloe, who is our dedicated crowdfunder sport coach, and as well as someone who has crowdfunded successfully. So first of all, I'm going to introduce you to Andy. Hi, Andy. How are you doing today?
I'm very good, thank you. Yourself?
I'm good, thank you. So please, can you tell us more about the Places to Ride Fund?
Yes, of course. So Places to Ride Fund is a tripartite fund being delivered in partnership between British Cycling, the DCMS Government Office and Sport England, very much with a focus on encouraging the development of cycling facilities in local communities across England. And the fund came from the legacy commitment following the Road World Championships that were held in Yorkshire in September 2019. So the key focus of the fund is really three areas. The first one is to encourage increases in participation from all manner of different backgrounds and different communities to learn to ride, to enjoy riding, to have those opportunities to ride a bike. The second one, to connect communities and recognizing some of the social cohesion and community engagement opportunities that cycling and clubs and groups and organised activity offers. And the third one is to create a lasting legacy, recognising that investment in hubs and facilities can provide that focal point for activity development and to provide opportunities for growth and sustainability for communities and groups and clubs.
Amazing. So can you tell us a bit about the types of projects that British Cycling are hoping to support?
Yeah, so we're very keen to work with any community-led organisation that has a cycling project or a project that involves cycling elements, and it's all manner of projects from new facility developments to improvements to existing facilities to equipment to support activities, whether that be able-bodied activities or whether that be adapted bikes for people with a disability. So all manner of cycling related projects. It is we're obviously keen to hear from clubs and groups from a cycle sport perspective, but likewise clubs and groups who purely look at cycling as a recreational or community engagement activity as well. So it's the whole breadth of opportunity for cycling.
Amazing, thank you so much. If you do have any questions for Andy, feel free to pop them in the chat box. And then for the meantime, we're going to hand over to Chloe, who is our dedicated crowdfunder sport coach.
Hi, Grace. How are you doing?
Hello, I'm good. How are you doing?
Yeah, good. Thank you.
Great. So you're going to tell us all about crowdfunding.
Sure. So crowdfunding is a great way to raise both money and awareness for your project through engaging with the community. You'll set up a page on our online platform, and don't worry if you're not too tech savvy. The platform is really, really easy to use, and we're here to help you every step of the way. You'll then promote that campaign to your crowd or community, and those that want to support you will make a pledge to help you reach your goal. Before you get started putting together your campaign page, it's important to think about your audience. This is a really important task when thinking about creating your page, but also later on when you're promoting it too. Think about all the different groups of people that might be interested in your project and why. The message to each of these groups is likely to be different, so you can make your approach a lot more personal. So here's an example I put together for a project that's going to build a new cycle path. If we take schools, for example, if the cycle path may provide a safer route to school for the students. And it's also going to encourage physical activity for the students. So it's a really important project and one that could be supported by the local schools in the area. And those are the sorts of messages you want to get across to them. On the other side of things, if we look at local businesses, perhaps there's a cafe that's en route of this path, and the project will bring more customers because you're bringing more people along the path and past that business. So the messaging to this group of people is going to be different. So bear that in mind when creating your project page, because you want it to be engaging for absolutely everyone that may be tempted to make a pledge. So when creating your page, you can include nice big headline sections to separate the text into the key parts of your project. So start with a little introduction about who you or your organization is and what is it that you do. This one sounds a bit obvious, but tell us why you're crowdfunding. What is the project that you're aiming to do with the money that you're raising? And tell us how you're going to spend the money that you raise. As a supporter, I'm much more likely to pledge on a campaign if I can see the direct result that my donation will make. So now you've got lots of information on your page. You want to make it a little bit more engaging, and the best way to do that is through images and videos. You can add images throughout the text, and you can add a nice big video at the top of your page to act as an elevator pitch. Summarize everything that you've put in your in the text of your page in about 1 to 2 minutes. This will get the message across quicker. People are more likely to watch a full video than read all of the text on a page. And it also adds an element of personality, which is really important when it comes to crowdfunding. The next thing to think about is rewards. So here at Crowdfunder, we are the top rewards-based crowdfunding platform. That means that on top of the traditional donations that you perhaps associate with fundraising, you can also offer something back in return from a pledge. So this project's a great example of a campaign that's done just that. Finsbury Park Skate Plaza are crowdfunding with us at the moment to build a brand new skate park. They have thought about their obvious network and tried to increase the amount pledged by these people. So in this case, it will be skaters are likely to pledge on this campaign because they want a new skate park. But rather than a £5 or £10 donation, they might want to pledge on a signed Peaky Blinders skate deck and actually pledge £250. That's a huge increase and adding a lot of value to your campaign through rewards. They've also thought about the wider audience, those that are in the area but aren't necessarily directly going to benefit from a skate park. How can you get those people to pledge? What they did is speak to local businesses who offered products and services to be used as a reward. So if you go onto the Finsbury Park campaign page, you can get a discount pizza just by pledging on a campaign. And immediately they're going to attract a wider audience and even attract pledges that perhaps wouldn't have necessarily pledged on their campaign otherwise. So now you've got your project page together, it's time to spread the word. You should start with your immediate network to get some initial pledges onto your page. You don't want to be promoting the campaign on 0% because people tend to follow what's popular. Adding a couple of pledges initially from your inner network is going to add credibility to your project and get the ball rolling. There are loads of ways to connect with your audience. You can download a QR code and add those on posters around the area. Social media is a brilliant tool in connecting with particular groups. There's often local Facebook community groups that want to know what's going on in the area. So that would be a great place to promote the project and also highlight some of those local discount rewards as well. We also have a tool called the Multiplier, which allows people to fundraise on behalf of your project. So perhaps you've got someone that wants to do, I don't know, a sponsored bike ride to help you raise money. They can do that and connect their project with yours to help you reach your goal as well. So as Andy introduced, we do have an awesome pot of extra funding with British Cycling, in which each project can receive up to £15,000 towards their project, or a maximum of 50% of their project target. Let me show you how that works. So you'll create your page and send in an application to British Cycling. This will be done through your dashboard on Crowdfunder. They'll let you know how much they're going to support you with, and you then need to start crowdfunding. Once you meet the initial pledge conditions, being 25% of your target and the required supporter numbers, that's when the pledge will be made onto your campaign and count towards your target. So it will boost you closer to your target. Now I'm just going to go back to where I mentioned required supporter numbers. This depends on what your target is. So let's take an example of a project target of £10,000. I can see in the table there that I need at least 50 unique supporters in order to activate that pledge from British Cycling. Once I've done so, I then need to make sure that I reach at least 100% of my target in order to secure the fund from the extra funding from British Cycling. If I do that before my campaign finishes, I've still got some time left. I can add a stretch target to avoid my campaign looking complete and to give my crowd a reason to continue supporting me. That's all from me for the time being. Grace, if you're there, I'm going to hand back to you.
Hi, so as I mentioned earlier, we're going to be hearing from someone today who has run a successful crowdfunding campaign. So today we've got Dan from Hayes for BMX Club, who has successfully raised £30,467 with 180 tips.
Hi, Grace.
Hello.
You all right?
Good, how are you doing?
Yeah, good, thank you.
Great. So first of all, can you just tell us a little bit about your project?
Yeah, so Hayes Hawks BMX Race Club is a BMX racing club based in West London. It's been around for a good number of years, 20, 30 years in various guises. And as the name would suggest, it focuses on BMX racing. And for those that don't know, a BMX race sees 8 people race around a specially designed track. It's actually an Olympic discipline. The Olympic races are about to occur tonight, I think, or tomorrow morning. And at the beginning of that track is a start hill, so a ramp, and on that start hill is a gate, and the riders will line up with their front wheel against that gate, as you can see in the photo on screen at the moment, and then a process is followed and gate drops and the race begins. The gate that we've currently got has been around for a long time. It's very old. It's somewhat temperamental. It has warped over time. It's starting to come apart. It needed to be replaced, basically, and they're not cheap to buy. So we set about to crowdfund for that purpose.
Okay, great. So you obviously crowdfunded for the gate, and then what was it that you found the most difficult with your crowdfunder?
So I mean, it's something new. There is a lot to learn about crowdfunding, and having just watched Chloe's slides there, I'm reminded of perhaps, just how much we have learn as we've gone by. We received a lot of help from Chloe and people at Crowdfunder and everyone else along the way. And so that's really great to be able to rely upon them. But, because you have a lot to learn and there's a lot to consider, I think one of the things that we we found easiest was making the Crowdfunder page itself. The Crowdfunder platform is really great, helps you out a lot, but what we hadn't accounted for is the amount of stuff that we'd need to consider in order to do the crowdfunding itself. You know, the page is the easy bit. I think the crowdfunding, reaching people and everything is, you know, was a lot more difficult, and it was really emergent. I think we didn't plan. We should, you know, I look back upon this, and in hindsight, I think had I listened to Chloe's slides before and actually taken them on board, I might have actually sat down and planned it out a little bit before getting the page and the campaign running. And I think finally, you know, I was lucky enough to have somebody else assisting me. And as I say, we received a lot of help from Crowdfunder themselves, but it is a very big commitment. And so don't go into this with your eyes closed. You know, it felt difficult at times to find time to do it alongside your full-time job.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that is really good advice, because I think a lot of the time people might not realize that actually it is a big commitment and it takes a lot of planning. So it's really good advice for people who are wanting to crowdfund.
Yeah, I think go slowly and do a little bit of planning before is one. I mean, you asked me to provide some tips at the end, so I'll leave those to the end. But yeah, that's definitely one thing we learned, I think.
Amazing. And then what did you think worked best with your crowdfunding?
Social media. Chloe, you know, mentioned the local Facebook groups. One of the pieces of advice she gave us was, in fact, you know, she found some local Facebook groups, one of which was, you know, was great. They turned around and they did everything they could to help us, and we received some donations and they spread the word. And that really gave us a sort of second wind at one point. Social media, and, you know, is obviously your friend here, and banging that drum is, you know, you've got to think again about just how much you need to communicate out, and social media is one way to do that. And finding outlets, having accounts with follower bases is important, I think. Then direct approach. So once you've actually got the page, you can then start to think about moving outside of social media, because you've got a point of reference. You can approach, you know, local companies, and indeed brands in your own industry. So the BMX community at large. I made many approaches to shops and brands themselves, all of whom were willing to, you know, offer assistance, because we said, look, this is something we're doing, and we were able to point to the crowdfunding page itself. And then lastly, using events. I mean, this ties into the multiplier feature a little, I suppose, but I think it's, you know, it's important that you recognize that if you can have a series of events such as sponsored rides, you know, we did a marathon cycle around the track, just having those sorts of key events that people can aim towards and know how they can connect with your project worked really well for us, because it can feel as though it's, you know, it's a very long process and quite tiring. But I think if you intersperse it with the events like we did, it gives people a means by which they can participate, they can, you know, they can meaningfully go out and raise funds, and they can have a little bit of fun along the way as well. Yeah,
100%. And I think what you were saying about Facebook is really interesting, because a lot of the time people, I think, kind of overlook Facebook a bit and they don't really realize just how great a tool it is for reaching out to people and finding support.
I think the key thing in that local community thing there was, in actual fact, that was the sort of the moment the penny dropped a little bit, or the light bulb went off, that when your crowd isn't the BMX community, your crowd is actually those outside of the BMX community, and you've got to work out how to connect with those people. You know, the British Cycling Places to Ride Fund is really applicable to us. We do a lot of work within the community as a club anyway, and BMX racing is increasingly seen as a safe means of entry to cycling as a sport and a pastime. So it's knowing how to connect with the people local to the track and say, you've got this amazing facility there, we need to make it safer for you, we need to make it better. Look, can you contribute to this in some way, shape or form?
Exactly. Yeah. And then, so other than the financial benefit, what would you say the other benefits of crowdfunding?
Oh, sorry. Typical. Sorry. The other benefits, I think, so primarily, I got to connect with a bunch of people within the club, and we got to achieve something together as a body of people and I wouldn't necessarily have the relationship that I have with them. And we've also, we've reached new members. We have, by making all of this noise, even within Hillingdon as a borough, which has a lot of cycling facilities. It's got a national road cycling track. It's got this BMX facility in it. There's a lot of cycling that goes on in that area. We've reached people that just weren't aware of the facilities they had on their doorstep. And that can only be good for cycling at large, BMX in this case, anyway. So I think there were two benefits there that are really, great to have seen.
Yeah, exactly, because part of crowdfunding is you getting your project in front of lots of different people, and it does raise so much awareness, definitely. Yeah. So my final question is, what advice would you give to someone that's about to crowdfund?
Okay, so I think I'm going to echo a lot of what Chloe says, but I think that, as I say, these things didn't dawn on us or occur to us until we stumbled upon them. So I think the first thing is define your crowd. Chloe's slide there about the cycling path, I think an exercise of going, well, who is our crowd? Who are we going to try and reach, and how are we going to try and get to them? Just thinking about how you're already connected with some of these people is important. So, and it's imperative that you must remember that your crowd isn't just the people that you're already connected with. It's, however small or tenuous the connection might be with other bodies of people with the track, or sorry, in our case, the track, or with your endeavor, you must think, even if you can attract one or two people from that crowd, it makes your crowd bigger, and it gives your network effect even larger as you start publishing more updates to them. I think I'd say build your crowd before starting your campaign. So, one of the things that I've looked at in hindsight is a set of metrics that startup companies use called pirate metrics, and they talk about acquisition, activation, and things like that. Well, how do you make some noise about the fact that you're going to start crowdfunding before you actually get down to crowdfunding, so that you've already got a following there, so that you've got something to talk to and a body of people? I think the multipliers, we should have made better use of those. I think you need to ensure that you don't consider it as one large crowdfunding campaign. We were trying to raise £30,000. Could we have found, 30 ways to raise £1,000? It feels less intimidating to you as a person. It means that you can share the workload that's involved by having 30 small projects. I know that means more coordination, but I think, you've got to look at taking a big number, breaking it down, because otherwise people just feel as though they can't connect. They don't know how to help raise 30,000. They know how to help raise 1,000 though. Yeah. And so if you can find 30 people that know how to raise 1,000, you're going to be well on your way, I think. And then finally, a point I've kind of already made, have a communication plan. And I genuinely go and read up about how to do communication and how to plan for it. Know what you're going to be saying, to whom you're going to be saying it, and when you're going to be saying it. And it's unfortunate. You need to develop a thick skin. You are going to become people's worst nightmare. You're going to be popping up on their radar all the time going, hey, it's me, got any money? But you need to know what you're saying to those people, because otherwise it can just feel like you're asking them for money instead of giving them a narrative and saying, so you need to help yourself, I think, overcome that reluctance to just ask people for money by knowing why you're asking them to get associated with your project.
Amazing. Couldn't have said any of that better myself. So I'm now going to get Chloe and Andy to come back, and we've got a couple of questions from the audience. Hi guys. So first of all, one for Chloe from Kelly. How long do you have to reach your target amount? Is the time limited?
Thanks, Kelly. So you will set the duration of your crowdfunder. You can set a crowdfunder anywhere between 2 and 8 weeks. We suggest 4 being the recommended amount of time. It sounds short, but actually crowdfunding works best if it's done in a short period of time, because it adds an element of urgency and means your crowd need to get behind you, and they've got sort of a deadline to make that pledge. if it's too long, it's very easy to be like, oh, I'll pledge later, and ultimately end up not pledging at all.
Great, thank you so much. And then for Dan, from Josh, what were you saying to the local businesses to get them to offer rewards?
So first what didn't work was we started asking about sponsorship, and they couldn't find a way to connect with an investment of money. So we learned along the way that sponsorship wasn't going to work for us, but that people were willing to give a small thing in an endeavor instead of contributing money. You know, we had hairdressers contributing free hairdressing sessions. We had pet groomers giving something, all because they have they know about the track in their local area. It was finding a way to connect them to the business. And ultimately it's about starting a conversation with these people and selling them on the idea of the fact that it's a community thing that they have on their doorstep, and helping them get involved that way.
Amazing, thank you. And then for Andy, from Lucy, will the fund support businesses or just non-profits?
Unfortunately, because this money is government money that's come through Sport England to us, unfortunately it's only not-for-profit organisations that we can support through the extra funding.
Great, thank you so much. And then Dan, I know you've got to run off, so just a couple of questions.
That's all right, no worries.
One of them is from Becky, and she is asking, what was the motivation for people to give the money?
I suppose that differs on person to person. I mean, the people that are within our immediate circle, those people that are connected with the club, you know, the parents the carers whose children are attending this, see the benefits to their children. The local school that uses the track was actively getting its parents to contribute again because they were benefiting from that. People within the industry, it's a tight-knit community, the BMX one. So that's a really vague answer. I'm really sorry, Becky, but it really depends on, and I think it comes back to my answer around the businesses, which is you need to find a way to connect them with your project. Yeah, and so in actual fact, we moved away from the gate a little bit from time to time and connected people more with the social aspect or the community aspect of what the club does, as opposed to asking directly for the gate. So I hope that helps. I
think that having a vague answer to that is absolutely right, because the motivation will be different for different people. You know, as you say, the schools they're going to have a different benefit to the club, to the local businesses, and so on. So, yeah.
This comes back to that point about identifying your crowd in advance as best you can, and doing that with as many people as possible, and leaving no sort of idea off the table, and then having your communication plan about knowing how you're going to connect with those people. I think that's the biggest piece of preparation you can do in advance of something like this.
Absolutely, and starting with that sort of little network map, you'll soon breach out, and it will be huge. So you can end up putting it in.
Yeah,
I love an Excel spreadsheet, so I'd put it in there. But you know, you'll realise how far your network reaches once you start that exercise of writing it down and thinking about who might be interested and why.
Yeah.
Great, and then just one last question for Dan. Would you do it again?
Absolutely. Yes. I would do it differently, of course, and I think you can tell how I would do it differently by what I've said. It has been a really rewarding process. You know, I've learned a lot. I've received so much help from various people, and ultimately I've got to meet a bunch of new people and form new relationships with those people, which is great, I think. So yeah, it's been a really rewarding process.
Great, that's like really great to hear. Exactly the kind of thing we like to hear at Crowdfunder. So I think that's all we've got time for in terms of the questions. So thank you, Dan and Andy, so much for joining us today. That's been really, really useful. Great to hear all about the fund and all of your tips on crowdfunding. And then I'm just going to hand over to Chloe just to talk us through the next steps.
Yeah, so next steps is time for you to become an expert yourself. We've got an awesome online learning platform that's an interactive course on crowdfunding, how to plan, create and run a successful campaign. It's got some videos and some quizzes on there, so it'll talk you through, and yeah, it will help you get there. So definitely check that out. If there's nothing else I can say, do your homework, get planning. And if you do have any questions throughout the process, I'm contactable on chloe@crowdfunder.co.uk.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And thanks again, Dan and Andy. I hope everyone's enjoyed today's session. I hope you found it useful, and best of luck with your crowdfunder campaigns.
Thanks, everyone. Goodbye.
Bye.